If you're considering an MSc Mathematics at the Open University, then this video is for you. The idea is to give you a decent feel for the course, so we'll start with an overview, then the cost, what the entry requirements are, including what you're expected to know before you start. We'll then discuss a typical module and how it evolves over the academic year. We'll go through how you're assessed with tutor-marked assignments and exams, and finally, how much time does it take out of your week? The Open University is a UK-based university specialising in remote distance learning, and with nearly 1,800 test centres worldwide and students in 157 countries, it's certainly possible to take this course in a lot of places, though I do recommend checking where your nearest test centre is. So for the MSc Mathematics course, you'll have a number of modules to choose from. Each of them are worth 30 credits, and you'll take 6 of them to give 180 credits in total. Your first module will be one of 2 entry-level modules, which I think are entry-level in that they have a slightly longer than normal introductory period in the first couple of months to make sure you have the basics down. Be aware that for some modules, you might be expected to have done one module before you can start another. And also be aware that not all modules run every year, so if you have a list of modules you want to take, you might have to do some planning around which year you'll take which module. So an example route through the entire MSc might look like this. Start in year 1 with an entry-level module, then 4 intermediate modules, though you might choose to do the other entry-level module. Then the dissertation probably last, meaning 6 years of study for the whole thing. The dissertation will be in the form of an extended assignment focused on a single topic, and you can find a list of example topics on the course website. So for the cost, the website currently says £1,105 per module, which gives a total cost of £6,630. Though do check because this might change over time, and it might be worth looking into the payment options on the website, including paying in instalments. Now let's talk about entry requirements. It's of course expected that you will have finished an undergraduate degree with a reasonably high amount of maths in it, but how much is to some extent flexible. I, for example, didn't come from a mathematical background, but did plenty of maths in my postgraduate studies, so of course I went into this knowing there would be some gaps in my knowledge. If you're in a similar situation, you might be asked to take the diagnostic test, where you might expect things like integrals, usually single variable problems, but you might need to use some techniques like change of variables or integration by parts. Expect some basic linear algebra problems, including calculating inverses, determinants or eigenvalues of 2x2 or 3x3 matrices. There might also be 1 or 2 differential equations to solve. The full list of topics you might be tested on for the diagnostic quiz is available on the website. If looking at this list doesn't scare you too much, or even if you're not totally confident with everything here, if you think that after a bit of studying you could fill in the gaps with the bits you're not too confident with, then in my opinion you're in a good position to do this course. Also, again, in my opinion, solving integrals is by far the most important thing to get some practice with before you start. A typical module starts in October with the course notes and the course handbook being sent to you. The course notes will contain detailed commentary on the topics you're studying as well as practice questions, and the course handbook is usually a kind of summary of the main methods or equations. During the academic year, you'll be given 4 tutor-marked assignments or TMAs. These are relatively evenly spaced, and each one tests you on the material you've just learned over the preceding couple of months. For each TMA, you generally have 4 to 6 questions totaling 100 marks. And although these are formative, that is, won't count towards your final grade for the module, do be aware that you have to score at least 30% in at least 3 of the TMAs. This might differ slightly between modules, so something to look out for. If you get stuck, there are usually lectures given around 1 to 2 weeks before each TMA deadline, where the tutors usually go through similar problems to those on the TMA, and so can be really helpful. So what does a typical TMA question look like? Well, each question is usually multi-part. The first one will be looking for a basic level of understanding on whatever topic you're working on, and will involve a decent amount of calculation. In my opinion, the Part A questions will allow someone who knows the minimum amount of the course material to scrape through with a pass. The Part B questions often follow from Part A, so you could expect it to start with "hence show that" and be expected to use your answer from Part A in further and potentially more advanced calculations. The last part of the question, Part C in this case, is usually the hardest and aimed at people wanting those top marks. Often, it'll require a bit more than pure calculation and might need some out-of-the-box thinking to show you've really understood the concept. The final exam, which often accounts for 100% of the final grade, is usually taken sometime in June. You can expect a period of about a month before the exam left for revision. So a typical exam contains 6 questions from which you have to choose 4 to answer. It's usually 3 hours long and would normally be at a local test centre, but recently remote examinations have been pretty common. The questions are similar to TMAs, but usually slightly easier since you're under time pressure, and you're generally allowed to take the course handbook with you. Not only that, but you can write notes in the handbook, so make sure to write down lots of things you might need to remember. That's things like trig identities, common integrals, and so on. The amount of time you'll need to spend studying will vary slightly depending on your background, but a reasonable expectation is around 8 to 10 hours a week for one module. I recommend that you make fixed weekly time slots where you know you're going to be studying. This tends to make it a little bit more manageable. You'll also have a week-by-week planner on the course website so you can track your progress through the material. Finally, if you're struggling to keep up with the time commitments and feel like you might fall behind, then my advice would be to stick to the TMAs. Learn what you need to know to pass the TMAs on the go while you're doing them. This tactic works when you have little time because you probably won't find much in the exam that you haven't already encountered in the TMAs. It's a good way of prioritising the essentials. If you're struggling with some of the mathematics, then you can always give your tutor an email. And if you have a little bit too much going on in your life, you can take a study break. That's leaving a year or 2 between modules. Remember, there's no time limit to finish this course, so a year off here and there can be really helpful. Thanks for watching. I hope that was useful. I'll see you next time.